welcome to today's video. I'm really glad that I'm sitting down and filming this because it's been on my mind for a couple of weeks. I thought it would be a fun video, so here we are. I know it's a little bit later in the season, but the end of summer was so joyfully busy that it was really hard to catch up, stay up, and get ahead, especially when so many videos are kind of like consistently monthly or reading, or it doesn't really matter. But I have wrangled up all of the books that I recently read this summer, and as you can tell from the title of today's video, I want to talk about everything that I read this summer. I have 18 books in this list of everything that I'm considering my summer reading, and the sun just went behind the clouds, hence why it got so dark in here. I thought it would be fun to talk about all of the books that I read this summer, my thoughts on them, whether or not I would recommend them, my favorites, as well as my least favorite books that I would not recommend. There's a lot to talk about in this video, so let's get started. I'm gonna break it down per month, so June, July, August, to the best of my ability. But like I mentioned, I read 18 books this summer. There's definitely a wide range of romance, thrillers, nonfiction, memoirs, literary fiction, as well as some spicier books, so there is a good mix in here. Overall, I think I had a really great reading summer, if not the best summer in terms of what I read of my life. It's definitely the most books that I've read in the summertime, but reading in the summer is my absolute favorite. It just hits different. Reading by the pool, outside, suntan. As you might be able to tell, I definitely got sunburned the other day. I went on like the end of summer cabin trip with my family, and I filmed a 24-hour reading challenge while I was there, so that will be out shortly. I think it's coming out after this because that includes some of my September fall reads, but I definitely got very sunburned by accident while I was there. So the final tan of the season, I guess, is upon us. If you follow me on TikTok, I did a yes, no, maybe version of this, but in today's video, I want to dive deeper into that and just yap some more, because that is one of the biggest differences, I think, between booktube and booktok. Booktok, I try to make very like short and to the point and easy to catch your attention and not lose it. Whereas booktube, I feel like I like to have these videos on in the background while I get ready. I like to listen to people talk more in depth about the books that they've read and what they would recommend and what they liked and disliked. And that is exactly what we are doing today. But since I mentioned it, if you do not follow me yet on TikTok, definitely check out all of my book talk videos. I also have a Goodreads account and an Amazon storefront with all of these books and much more. I also have a whole list of like my favorite bookish accessories and items related to reading that I would recommend. And then I also do have a bookstagram over on Instagram as well. It's just Booking It with Mac. If you're into that, definitely give it a follow. But let's break this down, starting with the books that I read in June, all the way to the last book that I read in the end of August. I also do have more in-depth videos on these books. I have like monthly wrap-ups, reading vlogs. It's sprinkled into some of my summer vlogs as well, but this is a whole summer reading wrap-up. The first book that I considered at the start of my summer reading was Rachel Hawkins' The Villa. I really loved this. It was kind of like a literary thriller. It takes place at a villa in Italy, and I talk a lot about this book in my June reading wrap-up and reading vlog, so I would recommend checking that out. I don't want to be too repetitive in this video, but I would definitely recommend this. This is a yes on the yes, no, maybe scale. It's not going to be a gripping thriller in the sense of like edge of your seat, terrifying that some of the other thriller writers are. I think Rachel Hawkins' thrillers are a lot more slow-paced, slow burns, thought-provoking literary thrillers, and they are always inspired by a more classic book or author, and that's what I really love about Rachel Hawkins. So The Villa is actually inspired, well, it's inspired by a lot, you know, like Fleetwood Mac, the Manson murders, but it's also inspired by Frankenstein and Percy and Mary Shelley's time at the Lake Geneva Castle. So I thought that was definitely kind of seeping through this plot. And I also read somewhere online, there was a review on Goodreads that definitely enhanced my perspective on this book, which was basically how there are like 3 different plots going on, or perspectives. There's like what happened in the book that the character is writing, what the character wants us to think happened, and then what actually happened. And when you look at that, it really comes together beyond that. I don't want to like spoil anything, but I really enjoyed this, and it was definitely a good summer thriller. It made me feel like I was in a villa in Italy. Since I wasn't able to be at a villa in Italy this summer, this was definitely a good second best. It was pretty fast-paced too, easy to get into. I really enjoyed this. The second book that I read this summer in June was Late Bloomer by Maisie Eddings. This was my first Maisie Eddings book and I really, really loved it. For sapphic romances, this was also so well done. I've read quite a handful of them at this point in my life. I love them so much, and there's always such a need in my perspective for even more. Like, there aren't many sapphic romances, so I definitely always want to give a platform to sapphic books in general. But this one is definitely a favorite of mine. It takes place on a flower farm. It's forced proximity. It's a little bit of, I would say, dislike to lovers, not like enemies to lovers, just like, basically Opal wins the lottery. She buys this flower farm, although it wasn't really, the person who sold her the flower farm didn't take into consideration that Pepper lives on the flower farm, so they come to terms where they share the cabin on the flower farm. I also think the characters were so well developed, whereas a lot of times in romances they're just not as thought out and chiseled, which is fine because you're not always there for like the character development. But I really, really loved where she took this book, and I think if you were looking for like a solid sapphic romance, I would recommend this. It was probably my favorite one that I've read, and I, like I said, have read a handful. It's just so cute. Something very exciting happened in June. HarperCollins sent me my next read. It was the newly republished version of Women by Chloe Cadwell. This is a novella that was independently published for years, and then HarperCollins recently published it and they just revamped it. There were lots of parts of this novella that I've underlined and related to. There's also a new introduction in this version of the novella, and it's super interesting because they describe this novella as something that has been almost like secretly passed around the community and something that a lot of people in the community know and have read. So if you have not read this book yet, I would highly recommend it. It just is so relatable. The back of it says, capturing the feverish heartbreak of sapphic romance, painting a stark picture of an identity in crisis and illuminating the exploratory possibilities of queer life. Women is an incandescent novella that brands the heart and sears the soul. So well done, so relatable. It reminded me of A Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, but queer. It's basically about a young woman who falls in love with another woman for the first time. However, her love interest is unavailable, and kind of displaying avoidant attachment style dynamics in a relationship. But the way that she describes feelings and just what is happening in this journey were so relatable. I almost felt like it was sharing parts of my own journey with this. On the yes, no, maybe scale, I said maybe because I really think you have to appreciate and enjoy this to enjoy the book. Like, if this is not for you, you won't like it, and that's why I said maybe. But if you are queer and looking for something that really emphasizes your own journey, I would highly, highly recommend this. The next book that I read was This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. I read this around my birthday and it was the perfect time. So if you are a mood reader, I highly recommend doing the same thing. This was my first Emma Straub book and I would recommend it. I think I said yes to this as well. So yes, no, maybe scale, this book was also a yes. I found the plot of this book to be so unique and cool and touching. It's basically about a woman who is turning 40 and wakes up and she's turning 16. A little bit of magical realism sprinkled in, and the heartbreaking element of this, which is basically on the first page, so I'm not spoiling anything by this, is that at 40, the protagonist's father is really, really sick, not doing well toward the end of his life. And when she wakes up and she's 16, her father, of course, is a lot younger and youthful and has no idea what the rest of his life will look like. And that really is, I think, one of the foundational elements of the plot in this book, of her going back to when she's younger and trying to change the outcome of what her father is later dealing with near the end of his life. So it's really heartbreaking in that aspect. It's really touching. It's one of those books that will make you miss your 16-year-old bedroom, miss your high school friends, maybe miss your high school crush, but also be glad that that's over, and all of the different paths that life can take. So I found this to be super touching and a really great book to read when you are reflecting on being another year older, which is why I said it would be great to read around your birthday. I also think the cover is just absolutely beautiful, and like I said, I would recommend this book to probably any type of reader. Moving into my July reads, I read Butcher and Blackbird this summer as well, and I had really high expectations for this book. Unfortunately, it did fall flat for me, and I talk more about that in other videos and TikToks. Unfortunately, it just didn't hit as well as I thought it would. A lot of different parts of the plot started to give me the ick, not even necessarily with like the serial killing, like the romance scenes were just so not my cup of tea. Lots of liquid talk and just weird things that I've never encountered before that were I was kind of just like, what? And then the bonus chapter. Listen, I'm always here for a good bonus chapter, but we did not need to know what was going on in the bonus chapter. That, like, let's keep some things private. Yes, no, maybe scale. I think I said maybe because I know a lot of people really loved this book, but personally, it just wasn't for me. If I were to be harsh, I would say no, but I know that a lot of people like this book, and I don't know, maybe it was just a wrong book, wrong time for me. But yeah, this was not one of my favorites, and I probably will not be reading the rest of the series if I didn't enjoy this. I just don't think I would enjoy Leather and Lark and whatever follows after that. I needed a palate cleanser after this, so I picked up The Buddha Off the Record. This is a very, very simple, short and sweet nonfiction. It's basically just a written out interview between the Buddha, Siddhartha, and the interviewer, just kind of going over Buddhism and different elements of enlightenment and his philosophy and what he kind of believes in and his past, his upbringing. It was nice. It was just nice. So again, I would probably say maybe for this book, just depending on your preference and if you think you would enjoy that. We have The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins as well. This was really, really nice. This was definitely a great pool read. I read this by the pool. If you've seen my other videos on this book, you know that the pool melted my copy of this book. It was super, super hot that day, and I learned the hard way that books come off with their spines when the sun is super, super hot and beaming down on you for hours. But I read this within like 24 hours, so it was a very solid thriller. Yes, I would recommend this. The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This was a very solid rom-com type of romance book. It was easy to get into, and that's what I love about Christina Lauren books, is that you can count on their books to be just easy rom-com reads. And The Unhoneymooners is definitely giving that summertime reading feeling. Basically, two enemies, rivals, have to go on this honeymoon together. The maid of honor and the best man, groomsman, from a wedding, they don't like each other. They have to go on the bride and groom's honeymoon for them and pretend to be on their own honeymoon because these two are the only two that did not get food poisoning at this wedding. The honeymoon was like the next day and it was non-refundable. So the bride, which was also the main character's sister, was like, you have to go on this trip for me. Otherwise, it's just like a wasted free trip. You'll never guess what happens when two people that don't like each other have to pretend to be married on a honeymoon. A lot of this plot reminded me of the rom-com movie, The Proposal. Definitely same vibes, but super, super cute, and the characters are from Minneapolis. I'm also from Minnesota, so that element I also enjoyed because they did reference a lot of places in the city that I've been to and am familiar with, so I liked that. But again, just an easy rom-com read. So yeah, yes, no, maybe, yeah. My first, if not only, 6-star read of the summer. You have heard me yap about this book a lot. I will not spend too much time yapping about it, but One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. I loved this story so, so much. It holds such a dear place in my heart. Such a beautiful story of, you know, that mother-daughter relationship and love and grief and heartbreak and life, and it's just so beautifully written. The way that she describes Italy is stunning. Basically, Katie, our protagonist, goes to Italy after the death of her mother because her mother always talked about this one place in Italy that she loved and she went to when she was younger. So Katie goes on behalf of her mother to kind of see why her mother fell in love with this place. She gets to Italy, she's so sad, she's missing her mom, she doesn't want to be there, she's grieving, and she's like, I'm gonna go home, like, this sucks. And then she runs into the younger version of her mom. She runs into her like 30-year-old mother when she is on this trip to Italy that she always talked about, and she gets to spend the summer with her mom when her mom is the same age as her in Italy. And it's beautiful and the perfect summer read. I exclusively read this outside, and if major bonus points if you can read this in Italy. Like if I were going to Italy, this is the book that you need to read. I have been recommending this book to everybody. It has made me cry in so many different ways, so many different parts. Like chapter 1, first couple of pages, I'm sobbing. The rest of the book, sobbing. The end, sobbing. So, alright, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about this is like a 6-star read feeling, but I know that I rated this 4.75 stars because of some unanswered questions that I personally had in my head that were never resolved. But really great book. Yes, you need to read this. At this point, my Elsie Silver journey has started because I read Wild Love. This was my first Elsie Silver book and I absolutely ate it up. I loved it. I get the hype. She is such a wonderful, great romance writer. And for romance books, I don't usually have like the highest expectations for that genre. Like it is what it is, and I'm reading that for like fluffy rom-com romance reads. This one holds up. Like it's definitely well done. I understand the hype. I love the size of this book and it's just so fun. It's got, you know, the billionaire trope, small town, brother's best friend or best friend's sister, depending on how you look at it, from whose point of view. I'm here for it. I really liked this. It was, again, another perfect summer read. So yes, I would absolutely recommend this book. I literally just bought Wild Eyes, which is the second book in this series, and I cannot wait to read it, but I'm here for it. I might so far even enjoy this more than the Chestnut Spring series, but we'll get into why in a couple of books because I have not read all of them yet. But for this one, absolutely a winner. Definitely give it a chance if you like romance books. I read The Girls in the Garden by Lisa Jewell this summer. This is the perfect summer thriller. It's about a girl that ends up unconscious during like a block party in a quiet cul-de-sac, and you unravel the mystery of what happened to her, who did this to her, and all of the little secrets that end up in this quaint, tiny little neighborhood. I love Lisa Jewell. She's one of my favorite authors. I've read a handful of her books by now, but to be honest, this book kind of fell flat for me because I know the talent that she has and I know how she can really take a plot and twist it. I was almost expecting more from this, but this is on her backlist, so it's one of the older books that she's written, I think. It's still really good. I would just recommend some other books by her first before this book. If this were your first Lisa Jewell book, I think I would just be afraid that you wouldn't pick up her better books. But all of that being said, there was like nothing wrong with this book. I just think her other books were better, so maybe. The Chestnut Spring series has entered the chat. I read Flawless again by Elsie Silver. Well, I read Flawless for the first time, a book again by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Chestnut Spring series, and it didn't hit. I talk about this on TikTok and a lot of other people felt the same way. I know that this wasn't a favorite for a lot of people and that the series gets better, so I am eager and excited to read the rest of this series, but I just wasn't into Flawless as much as I was into Wild Love. Like, this book was so much better than this book, in my opinion, but in order to read the series, I knew I had to read Flawless. I didn't get into it as much as the other ones, but it was still really fun. And then I also saw the movie Twisters around this time, and I just kind of felt like that was very fitting. That was the vibe. I had my cowboy country summer moment, and this fit. My next book, I literally don't know why I keep telling the internet that I've read it, because it's kind of embarrassing how much I enjoyed it. For the plot, I swear, for the plot. The Juliet Society by Sasha Grey. I was super intrigued by this book, not only because of the cover, but the more that I looked into Sasha Grey, she's a retired adult performer, actress, model, musician, former adult film performer. She was also in The Girlfriend Experience and HBO's Entourage, but I was very intrigued by her work history and where she could take that as a writer. Basically, the Juliet Society is about this super private, secret, elite society known as the Juliet Society, where the wealthiest of wealthy celebrities and high-profile people go, I think, once a month, and it's basically just like a spicy get-together, but very, very low-key. Nobody knows it exists. If you know about it, you're part of it, and that's like it. Basically, this college student, she discovers the Juliet Society, and it's so interesting because a lot of this plot is in her mind. So when I say it's like super, super spicy, and a lot of people that have reviewed this on Goodreads saying like, what the hell did I just read? I feel like that's definitely if you didn't know what you were getting into, but I found it so intriguing, and everything that is spicy, like I said, was mostly in her mind. I know I am totally on my own when I say this, but the style of writing and how she like describes a scene that isn't real, it reminded me of Virginia Woolf and how she writes about the subconsciousness and the like imaginary versus reality. It had the same element, and yeah, I enjoyed it. But when I did do the yes, no, maybe on this book, I think I said no because I didn't want people to read it and like not understand and not get it, or read it and then be like, why was this girl on YouTube recommending this book because it was terrible. Like, I know that not everyone will appreciate this book, and because of that reason, I just want to like treasure it privately. But I really, really liked it, and I liked the style of writing. I read this in like a day. I think there's a couple more books in this series, so I will be reading I will be reading the rest of them for sure. Okay, then I get into my Lauren Asher books. I read Love Redesigned this last month in August, and again, this was just one of those books that fell flat. I could not get into it. I was bored. I felt like the plot wasn't really going where I thought the plot would go. And I know I'm not alone in this, but I feel bad saying all this stuff because I know a lot of people enjoyed this book, but I know a lot of people also on my TikTok agreed and said that they DNF'd this book. So I don't know, it's either a book for you or it's not. And for me personally, I feel like it might have been a wrong book, wrong time situation, but I just couldn't get into this book. I really couldn't. It is like a romance book. I wouldn't recommend it. The only reason that I read this too was because I wanted to read Love Unwritten by her, and this is the second book in this series. So even though you don't necessarily have to read all of the books in a series, I want to read it in the order to get the most out of it. So I did read this book just to get the most out of Love Unwritten, but honestly, you don't have to. Like, you really, really don't. And I'm enjoying this one so much more. I'm still reading this. This will be a September read, but I did start it in August. I just took a little bit of a break from romance. This one is so much better. She basically is like a live-in nanny for this guy and his son, and the plot is just a lot more well developed, and I enjoyed this one. This one, not so much. I've got 3 hardcovers left. I read Anna Kendrick's memoir, Scrappy Little Nobody, this summer. I really, really liked this. If you love Anna Kendrick, you will love her memoir. It is definitely her voice too. Like, no ghostwriter here. I can hear her speaking when I read this book, and those are the best memoirs, honestly. I wonder who does the audiobook. If she does the audiobook, you need to listen to it. I'm not a big audiobook listener, so I'm not the person to like come to for that, but I love the memoir. I learned so much about her upbringing and her start in the industry, her years with like Pitch Perfect and Twilight and personal love stories and all of that. So super, super fun. I'm always here for a good like struggle to success story arc, and I feel like memoirs always inspire me and motivate me to feel like I can still take my life in a really cool direction. I also learned a lot of things. Like, I had no idea some of the stuff that she went through in her early years in Hollywood and all of that. So she's definitely one of the hardest workers that I have ever learned about when you learn about kind of the sacrifices that she made throughout her years. I read Riley Sager's newest release this summer, Middle of the Night. I loved the ride that this book took us on. It is such a good thriller. Riley Sager just knows how to craft a thriller that will like have you a little bit scared, but for a silly reason. Like, reading this, I was so scared. I had to read this during the day. Like, as soon as he brought up a few plots, as soon as I saw some words written that were so scary to read at night, I can't spoil it, so I won't say what the words are, I shut the book immediately and said, nope, not tonight. Terrifying. This book felt like summer. I would definitely recommend reading this book in the summertime. You don't have to, but like as a mood reader, I enjoyed reading this in the summertime. I feel like I repeat the plots of these books so often that I forget to like say what the plot is again in each video, but two boys in a quiet New Jersey cul-de-sac are sleeping in a tent in the middle of July. Middle of the night, someone slices open the tent, takes Billy. Billy is missing. Billy is never found. You follow the other boy, Ethan, when he is 30, but it also does time hop to that night that it happened, trying to figure out who took Billy, what happened to Billy, and all of the mysteries that kind of surround that. But there's definitely a ghostly element here, and it's just super, super spooky, but it was good. I will say I did not enjoy the ending, and I talk about that on TikTok, so I think this book I still said was yes, would recommend, but knowing the ending of other books that Riley Sager has written, I think I just expected it to go in a different direction than how he decided to end this book, and just by itself, without spoiling anything, it's sad. It is just sad when you learn the truth, and I was hoping for more. But besides that, I would still recommend this book. The last book that I have on my summer reading list was Sally Hepworth's Darling Girls. This is her newer release. I think her newest release, honestly. I really, really liked it. I don't know why some of the book girlies have been bashing this book. I get it. She really did need a new editor. There were so many mistakes and typos left in this book, and I wasn't the one to call her out. Like, Goodreads reviews were all over it. But the plot itself, I really, really loved. The characters that we followed, I really, really loved. The things that they still deal with after what they went through as children were like relatable, real. I also loved that there was a queer character. Like, it was great. You follow three sisters that grew up in a foster home together. There's a body discovered underneath the home that they grew up in, and now the police are interviewing them, trying to figure out whose body this is, what happened in that home, and just the truth and sad, sad truth of what they lived through and what they went through comes out. And beyond the mystery and the thriller element of this, because I'm here for it, like, love the plot, beyond that, it is just sad. It's just a sad story. It's heartbreaking. I'd say there are slight trigger warnings, and I don't... It's just sad. The ending has you a little bit confused and, again, sad. I don't know. When you are dealing with what this book decides to deal with and where Sally Hepworth takes this body and what happens, it just becomes a very sad situation about a certain thing that nobody really wants to read about or know about. And that's, you know, me not spoiling anything, but really, really good thriller. It's going to deal with a lot of hard topics, and I think it gets a lot harsher reviews because of that. And after listening to some of these book girlies that I follow that review books, they for some reason gave this a really weird review, and I think it's because they didn't take like the severity of the situation seriously, and they were hoping for more of like a spooky thriller. This is a slower, sadder thriller mystery. But I read this in 24 hours. It was really, really good, so I would recommend. Those were all of the books that I read this summer. Definitely a lot of various reads, but I hope that you were able to add a couple to your personal TBR list. I think if I were to make the lists of best and worst books I read this summer, the best books that really stuck out to me that were personal favorites of mine this summer definitely include Darling Girls, One Italian Summer, and Wild Love. And then the worst books that stick out to me this summer that I just did not enjoy as much as I thought I would have to be Flawless, Butcher and Blackbird, Love Redesigned, and Riley Sager's Middle of the Night. Not saying these are bad, and I'm not saying you shouldn't read them. In fact, I would still recommend most of these books so that you're able to have your own opinion about it, but from everything that I read, those were just my least favorite. But yeah, that was my summer reading wrap up and everything that I read this summer. If you want more info on the books that I've read, I highly recommend checking out some of my summer book videos, such as my summer reading vlogs, as well as my monthly June, July, and August reading wrap-ups that really dive deeper into the books and my thoughts on them. And then also on my TikTok, I've got the shorter, condensed versions of those always. Lots of book content for the book space. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know if you like these. I can do more for like a fall reading wrap-up. I just felt like I wanted to close out the season with sharing the books that I read this summer and which ones I would recommend. Honestly, I would recommend all of these books though, because I do feel like it's important to develop your own opinion on books when you are consuming book videos, because some of my favorite books I know that other people did not like, and vice versa. I'm totally comfortable with us having different opinions, and I actually encourage that conversation because I want to know why you didn't like one of my favorite books, or I want to know what I missed in a book that I didn't like that you loved. That discussion is really important. I don't think it's embraced enough in the book community, because as soon as somebody disagrees with somebody's book preference, it seems to be shut down or blocked or seen as hate. But I'm here for it. Hate on my favorite book. Tell me why you liked a book I hated. Like, let's talk about it. But that's all I have to say for this video. I had such a great season of reading this summer, but I'm looking forward to my fall reads, and I will be filming a huge fall and thriller TBR list soon, so be on the lookout for that. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video soon. Bye!